We all make mistakes when parenting our teens that cause disconnection between us, which ultimately means we have less influence in their lives and their behavior can spin out of control. Hey there, I'm Ann Coleman, an attorney turned parent educator and host of the podcast Speaking of Teens. This channel is all about helping you improve your teen's behavior by decreasing the conflict and strengthening your relationship. And I'm going to tell you about 5 mistakes that will do just the opposite. And I made them all. First, one of the biggest mistakes we make is not understanding why our teens think, feel, and act the way they do. This isn't our fault. It's not like someone gathers us up and pulls us aside before they start middle school and says, hey, let me tell you something. Their brain's about to explode and everything's going to change. But we certainly should. Somebody should pull us aside and somebody should tell us this stuff. So that's what I'm trying to do. So, what happens when they start exhibiting this typical adolescent behavior, which is way different when they were kids? We panic a little bit, or we might even get angry and we think, oh my God, no, this is not happening. Either way, we overreact, which starts a cycle of control and rebellion. So what happens is like when we get to this stage of parenthood, we think, oh, we've got it made now. They're a little more responsible and they even behave sometimes like adults. They can talk like adults. They even look like adults and they can make their own food sometimes. But then, bam, they do something reckless or they treat us with disrespect or they throw a temper tantrum and all this stuff comes out of left field. And we think, what the hell is wrong with them? This is not like them. There's something off here, and I've got to make this stop right now. But here's the problem. Our expectations and ideas about how they should be able to act by now are simply wrong, and we don't realize it. They're just acting like a teenager whose brain is still a work in progress. But when we see them act so grown up sometimes and see what they can do when they put their mind to it, they even look grown up and they understand a lot of grown up stuff. So we forget that they're actually a long way away from being a grown up. As a matter of fact, their brain won't be fully adultified until they're way into their mid 20s, maybe even their late 20s. Their brain simply cannot and does not do what our brain can do. So when you assume that they could treat you with empathy and kindness, or remember your birthday, or even remember what to do at a certain time of day, or hang their damn wet towel up, you're just making your life and theirs more stressful. When you expect more than they can actually do, it creates conflict. It causes arguments. Parts of their brain are extremely sensitive right now, which causes big explosive emotions, sometimes for no good reason at all that we can see. And it makes them really nervous about things that makes no sense to us. It causes them to take risks and to do things that we'd never imagine that they do, especially when they're around their friends. Because friends are what they are completely obsessed with. They're obsessed in fitting in and being accepted by their peers. Worse still, the part of their brain that manages executive functions is undergoing major construction right now, which means that it's weak and it's not very good at its job of making good decisions and using self control and regulating emotions and planning ahead and staying focused. It's not even really good at making them sleepy at a decent time anymore. So when we don't understand why they act the way they do and that they cannot do any better than they're doing, it drives us crazy. It baffles us. And frankly, it pisses us off and disappoints us. And it may even feel like we screwed up somehow. You might even assume that they're lazy or entitled or narcissistic or materialistic or egotistical, whatever. You may not say these things out loud, and you may not even recognize that you're thinking them, but it will start affecting how you treat your kid because it will affect how you feel when you hear that smart aleck comment coming out of their mouth, or you see dirty dishes piled up on their nightstand, or you hear them whine about wearing an off brand shirt that they have to wear. Understanding how their brain works can help you be more empathetic, which can help you manage your own feelings about them and therefore respond to them more appropriately. Otherwise, you're just reacting on pure emotion, which usually means coming down really hard on them, which leads to conflict and rebellion, which leads you to try to control them even more. You end up in this death spiral with them. If you want to learn more about how their changing brain affects their thoughts and their emotions and their behavior, you can grab my free guide, The Challenging Adolescent Brain, which I'll link to in the comments below. Something else that we do all too often that causes so much conflict and disconnection with our teens is that we invalidate or fail to acknowledge their feelings. And boy, did I make this mistake. As I just said, teens are very emotional because of the changes going on in their brain. And if they have ADHD or other developmental or mental health disorders, or they use substances, their emotions are even more off the rails. The part of their brain that controls the fight or flight response, the amygdala, is super sensitive. Fight or flight is that automatic response our brain has when we're physically threatened in some way, like we nearly step on a snake or a car swerves into our lane. We automatically react without thinking to either avoid the threat, we take flight, or we fight. We stay and we deal with it. We live in a modern society where there aren't really many physical threats around every corner, but our brain hasn't evolved to realize that. We all react to what our brain perceives as any sort of threat, like maybe a deadline at work, or the boss calling you into her office, or getting on a phone call with your kid's school. And your teen's amygdala, because it's so sensitive to perceived threats, will make mistakes all the time and cause the fight or flight response over nothing. That's why they get angry at you when you ask them a simple question, or they smart off when you're just minding your own business. It's their brain. They aren't doing this on purpose. But when we don't understand why they're feeling or acting the way they are, we often just want it to stop, or we want them to feel okay. Their emotional reactions make us uncomfortable in some way. Maybe it makes you anxious or frustrated or angry or sad. And that's when we screw up. We say or do things based on our own emotions without taking theirs into consideration. You might say something like, "This is not that big of a deal," or "Please stop," or "Everyone likes you," or "I thought this wouldn't be a big deal because didn't you say you didn't like them anyway?" Or "Why don't you just tell them you're sorry?" Saying anything like this shows your teen that you have no faith in them to understand their own feelings, that you just don't get it. Whatever the reason for their unpleasant emotions, even if it's something you've done or said, you need to take the time to listen to them and acknowledge how they feel. Let them know you understand what they're feeling. It doesn't mean that you agree with what they're saying or you condone how they're acting about it. It's simply an acknowledgement. So you might say something like, "I know you're disappointed. It sucks not to hit a goal that you've worked so hard for." Or if you don't think they'd respond well to hearing that right now, you could simply give them a hug, or take their hand, or give them a pat on the back, or just an understanding look. No matter the situation, they should always know that you're willing to hear them out and that you understand where they're coming from. You know what they're feeling. This is huge. The only exception is when they're so angry and dysregulated that they aren't really saying anything that makes sense. In that case, you can excuse yourself, let them know you'll be back after they've calmed down a little bit. And that's when you can also talk about anything that they may have done while they were dysregulated, like name calling or slamming cabinet doors or whatever. If you dismiss, ignore, or invalidate their feelings, you'll only intensify their emotional state and cause them to keep trying to convince you of how they feel. That's the opposite of calming down. Always put yourself in their shoes. If you were angry and upset about something, maybe something your boss said, and you came home and you told your spouse the whole story, and they said, "Well, that doesn't seem like a big deal to me. I just ignore it." How would that make you feel? Wouldn't you rather hear something like, "Wow, that sounds just awful. I'm so sorry you're dealing with that. Come in for a hug." Talk to your teen the way you'd want your spouse or a good friend to talk to you. You'll get much further in building a strong emotional connection with your teen that way. Validation is a big part of a parenting skill called emotion coaching. And I'll link to a free guide on that in the comments below that you can grab. Another huge mistake we make with our teens is that we try to continue parenting them as if they were still children and we were still the big boss. After your kid hits puberty, as I say all the time, the telling is over. Because of all those changes going on in their brain, they're not going to respond well to the same parenting strategies you may have used in the past. It's a different ballgame altogether now. They've changed, so your parenting must change. It's no longer a dictatorship. You're not the boss or the manager. If you try to be, you're going to have more rebellion than you can shake a stick at. The dynamic changes between you and your teen for several reasons. First, their brain has developed the ability to understand more abstract ideas and perspectives. So they understand the world around them differently than they did before. They see you differently now. They see you as just another fallible human who just happens to be their parent. They no longer believe that you always know best. They understand things now that they didn't understand when they were younger. They've been let in on a lot of these adult secrets, and they've dabbled in adulthood in many ways. And they now feel much more like an adult than a child most of the time. They feel they should be treated just like you want to be treated, with respect and dignity. They want to make their own decisions. They want more freedom, and they even want more responsibility. The bottom line is they want to feel like an autonomous human being, just like we all do. They're trying to figure out their place in the world and they want to be taken seriously. They want you to ask their opinion and listen to them when they give it. At the very least, if you can't let them do as they want, they just want a chance at least to be heard on the issue. Anything that affects their life, they want you to listen to them about it at the very least. It's so very hard for some of us to think back to our adolescence. It's been a long time for some of us. During this stage of development, they're teetering back and forth between wanting to be an adult and still wanting the safety and security of being a child. They're really torn between two worlds. They need us, but they don't want to need us. And finding that balance in our parenting is hard. We have to learn to read between the lines and support their autonomy, even when we have the final say on an issue, when we have to say no. There's an art to this, and we have to accept that it's not as easy as just saying no. We have to finesse the situation now. We have to work with them and share our control with them rather than continuing to try to be the boss. That is, if we want their cooperation. They have to see us as an ally instead of the enemy. We have to maintain our connection if we want them to listen to us when they really need to. We have to earn their trust so they'll let us in, tell us things, and ask for our advice. Supporting their autonomy will allow you to keep them safe and healthy and guide them in the right direction. But if you fail to support their autonomy, you'll cause more arguments and power struggles and fireworks than you can imagine. One of the best rules of thumb to help you support their autonomy is discuss, don't declare. As I said earlier, the telling them what to do is over. You now need to have discussions with them about anything that concerns them, rather than just making a unilateral decision and then declaring or commanding something. Again, you have to give them a chance to be heard, to speak their mind, and you have to listen, and you have to let them know that you get it, even if you can't agree with them. Instead of saying, no more games or whatever before homework, you can initiate a conversation about it, a calm and rational discussion. These conversations are how they learn life lessons and how you grow closer to them. Tell them what you've noticed if there's a problem with their behavior. Ask them, what's up? Use reflective listening, validate their feelings, tell them your concerns, and then try to negotiate something if possible, rather than just telling them how it's going to be. Yes, this takes longer. It takes patience, but it also supports their autonomy. It avoids so many blowups and power struggles, and it maintains your connection, which is what keeps you in their life. No more unilateral decisions, no more bossing them around. If you want a better behaved teen, you have to learn to regulate your emotions, have a little patience, and work with them rather than against them. Another big mistake we make, and something that so many of us failed to learn growing up, is that discipline doesn't equate to obedience. And it's not meant to be adversarial or to cause pain of any kind. Discipline means to teach them something. And in this case, it means teaching our teens how to become emotionally healthy young adults by maintaining our connection with them. During the teen years, discipline boils down to teaching them the skills that they need in an autonomy supportive way, rather than punishing them for not yet having those skills. And this is what we end up doing, punishing them for messing up or making mistakes. They need our help to learn how to do these things. Their brain isn't there yet. They need practice and scaffolding and support. They can't do adult things yet because they're not an adult yet. They have years to go. So stop expecting them to behave like an adult and punishing them when they can't meet those expectations. One of the very best ways for them to learn the skills that they need by making those mistakes and then living with the consequences. As long as those consequences are not dangerous or unhealthy, unethical, illegal, or closes some door to their future. Natural consequences happen automatically. No one has to enforce anything. It just happens. Allowing natural consequences prevents arguments and power struggles. You can stop reminding, questioning, and punishing. For example, if they don't wash their uniform, they have to wear it dirty. If they go to bed too late, they have to go to school sleepy. They learn a lesson without any arguing with you. As long as the natural consequence doesn't fit into any of those categories, it's best to just let it happen, as hard as that is to accept sometimes. But if we jump in to rescue them from all natural consequences, we're literally robbing them of the opportunity to learn from their mistakes. And that becomes a real problem when it comes time to leave home and they have no clue yet how to be an adult. But the other side of natural consequences is logical consequences. And over the years of issuing a lot of unhelpful consequences and then studying adolescents and teaching about adolescents, I've developed a pretty strong opinion about issuing consequences to teens. One big problem is that most of us don't understand the concept of logical consequences. Spoiler, they must be logical and teach something. And most of the time, that's not the case. And the consequences parents dole out are just punishments by another name. And we know that punishment never works to change behavior in the long term. Prisons are running over with people who have been previously punished and are back in there again. It might frighten a teenager into submission for just a little while, but in the process, it usually causes power struggles, conflict, disconnection, and ultimately rebellion. Punishment is all about retribution. I'll show her she can't get away with this. And that's usually what we're thinking when we issue a consequence. Most of the time, you can avoid consequences by having a collaborative type of conversation with your teen. Ask them what happened. Get to the bottom of the underlying issue. What skills are they having a problem with? And then work with them to help them get it right next time. That's the goal, to help them succeed and learn, not to punish them and make them hate you and rebel against you, right? I'm talking about listening to them, asking the right questions, validating their feelings, telling them what worries you about this, and working together to brainstorm ways that they can avoid this issue next time. If they vaped when they promised you that they wouldn't, then you ask them what happened. Do they do it to relax? Do they do it with other kids and don't know how to say no? Do they do it because they're anxious about something? You have to understand what's going on so you can take the next step to problem solve with them. If they're anxious, maybe going to a therapist will help. If they don't know how to say no, Practicing some resistance techniques might do the trick. But you'll never even know what's going on and how to help them if you just automatically take their phone away or ground them for a period of time. That's not going to help them avoid vaping. It will just make them get better at hiding it from you. I get into all the details about this in the Field Guide for Teens, which is my course inside Parent Camp. You can find the link in the channel description. Now, this last mistake is one I believe 99% of us make simply because we're human. Did you ever get the comment on your report card that said something like, Anne's not living up to her potential? Yeah, I certainly did. Anyway, as parents, we have this idea in our heads of how our kids should be. We've been building this movie reel in our brains since they were little. We see their potential in everything they do, and that thrills us and lights us up. And we take those little sparks and we stitch them together in our brain, and we create this perfect, ideal kid. This is how it's supposed to be. This is what they could be if everything goes as planned. But guess what? Things never go as planned because your kid is not an idea. They're an imperfect human who, during adolescence, is trying out different personas like they're trying on clothes. They don't know who they are yet, so you can't possibly know that. That movie reel is a fallacy. Their potential is something you've created in your mind that doesn't exist. The same as the teacher who writes some stupid comment about potential in a report card. The problem is when you build up this ideal kid in your mind, anytime they fall short of that, it freaks you out and you jump in to try to fix them, to drag them back over to the light. You watch for any sign of them not living up to their potential and you find it everywhere. And when we feel our kids aren't living up to this potential, it does something to us. It makes us feel like we've failed somehow. It puts a huge dent in our ego. It disappoints us. It makes us sad. And it makes us fearful about their future or even angry at them for not doing what we've decided that they should be able to do. This movie reel in our head causes major disconnection between us and our teens. Instead of focusing on the human they're really becoming, we focus on the human we want them to be. Instead of supporting them in their own journey of discovery and growth, we're hell bent on fitting them into this little box we created in our mind. Everything we do shouts to them that we want them to be someone they aren't. They feel it in their bones, our disappointment, our disdain, even. They feel criticized. They feel like a loser. They feel they can't possibly win. They can't please us no matter what they do because we just don't get it. How does this show up in your life with your teen? Well, all those reminders that you give them, the little questions you ask, the statements you make when you're trying to pull them back into your movie reel, those things cause conflict and make them feel bad about themselves and cause a big rift in your relationship. That part of their brain we talked about a minute ago, the amygdala, it causes them to interpret your behavior and your statements, your expressions, your tone of voice, almost everything more negatively than you even mean it to be. They interpret so much of what you say as criticism, put downs, and disappointment in them. So when you have this movie reel going and you're trying to get them to live up to their potential, you're setting yourself up for lots of blow-ups and disconnection between you and your kid. Think about it. Why do you remind your teen to do their homework or not to forget to wash their uniform, or you ask them questions about their grades or their friends or whatever? It's because you're afraid they're going to screw up, that they're going to fall outside of that ideal. Seeing our kids mess up is even worse than when we mess up. We're too emotionally invested in their performance. We're focused on their outside when we should be focused on their inside, their emotional growth. They're learning through their mistakes and figuring things out for themselves. Look past their performance. Look at the person they want to be and help them be that person. Help them see how fabulous they are, just like they are. Tell them how proud you are of the person they're becoming. despite grades, their willingness to clean their room, or any other areas that you feel they may be falling short. Look for those positives and call them out on a regular basis. We spend far too much time pointing out their shortcomings and making them feel less than when our time should be focused on building them up. Try it. Let go of that movie reel. Start focusing on their positive attributes and let them see that. Let them mess up and learn their lessons now while they have you there to help them get back on the track they want to be on. All right, that's it for today. If you want to learn more about how to parent your teen, just click here and watch this next video and subscribe for more. Thanks for being here. I hope to see you next time.